Module Federation for Vue on this Blue Collar Coder. I'm Jack Harrington at Jahur on Twitter. So I've wanted to do a Vue video for a long time. I'm really excited about the potential for using Module Federation with Vue. Now, what is Module Federation? Well, it's a new way of sharing code between applications. So far, we've pretty much been familiar Module Federation for Vue on this Blue Collar Coder. I'm Jack Harrington at Jahur on Twitter. So I'm really excited about this video. I've always wanted to do Module Federation for Vue, and now I get a chance to do it. It's super exciting. So what is Module Federation? Well, it's a new feature of Webpack 5 that allows you to share code easily live between two applications. You're going to get to see that today. I just want to stress, this is built into the Webpack 5 core. It's not a bolt-on. It's not anything, crazy. You have to pay for it or anything like this. This is an exciting new way to share components between applications, essentially the heart of an MFE stack built in to Webpack 5. So you're going to get to see it in this video. It's really exciting, and it comes out in October in release form. So what we're going to do is build two Vue applications and then get them sharing code between each other. Let's jump into the code. So this is the first of the two apps that we're going to create for this. This is the home page for our dog adoption site. And this is the dog detail page. You go to this page after clicking on an adoptable dog. And this is my Webpack 5 Vue 3 Module Federation Starter Kit. You can use Vue 2 or Vue 3 for this, but for this, I'm just going to use Vue 3 for this introductory video. So to get there a little bit more quickly, I've gone and created this gist that has all of the contents of these different apps ready to go. So the link for that is down in the description. And they're pretty much just blocks of HTML and CSS, just to make it look pretty, give us a nice applications to work on. And then finally, this is just a nice little shout out to placedog.net. That's where I get the images for this video. And these are really cute dogs. So it's always fun to have some cute dogs that are in these videos. So let's close a few of these unneeded tabs. And we'll go back to the starter kit, grab the URL for that, copy it. And then we'll create a new directory called mfdogsite. And then we'll change directory into that. And then we're going to use an npx dgit command. What that does is basically just clone the repo and then remove the .git directory. So we give it the URL first, and then we give it whatever target directory we want. So in this case, we'll say home. And we'll bring up VS Code. And let's have a look at what's in home at this point. So the package JSON, it's pretty simple stuff. We've got some scripts at the top that basically start it and build it. And so down in the dev dependencies, you can see a pretty standard set of dev dependencies. You've got a recent release of Babel and the various loaders. And the interesting parts are the Webpack, which is the beta of the 5, and then the HTML Webpack plugin, which is on a forked version. And then Vue down in dev dependencies is 3.0 and its most recent release candidate. Over in the Webpack, we can see that it's a pretty simple Webpack as well. The really important part on this one is the port numbers. We're going to actually be using different port numbers to differentiate between the two apps. So in this case, that port number is 8080. Down the rules, there's Vue Loader, as you'd expect. And then, of course, the Vue Loader plugin down in plugins. And there's also the Module Federation plugin that we'll be using later on. Over on the source side, there's an index.html. And I'm just going to change out document for home so that we can see by the tabs what's what. Index, in turn, loads up bootloader. So let's take a look at bootloader. Bootloader uses create app from Vue to instantiate app.vue. And app.vue is a pretty simple template. So let's just start this up. First, we need to change directory to home. Then we need to run yarn to install all the dependencies. And then finally, yarn start. And there you go. Hello from Vue. But that's not what we want. We want a nice little home page. So let's go over to our gist and go grab the code for that. Make a copy, and then just replace the entire contents here. And there you go. Nice adoptable dogs with a bit of banner text at the top. Okay, the next thing we want to do is exactly the same thing, but for a new app, and we'll call that dog detail. So we'll go back up to the parent directory and then run that npx dget command, except this time we'll give the directory name as dog detail. Now we need to adjust the port number because we don't want those to collide. So we're going to open up the Webpack config and then change 8080 to 8081. And then we're going to change the package name to dog detail. You don't really need to do that, but it's just nice anyway. We'll go and change the title on the document to dog detail. And finally, we'll go and grab the contents from the gist. A little bit longer in this case, essentially just the same sort of thing, just a combination of HTML and CSS. All right, let's yarn to install all the dependencies. And then yarn start to run the app. And there's our starting point for this. We've got our two applications running, home and dog detail. Okay, so now we've got our two applications set up. We've got the home page and we've got that dog detail page. The next thing that we want to do is go and build a header in that home page and get it shared with the dog detail page live using Module Federation. So let's go back over to the home project and create a new file called header.vue. So we're going to go grab header.vue, copy all that code, and paste it into header.vue. Now let's go and add a script tag to app.vue and import that header.vue. And then expose it as one of the components. And then add it to the template. Okay, looking pretty good. This is pretty standard so far. We're not doing anything unusual. So the next thing we want to do is expose that to our dog detail page. So let's go over into the Webpack config. I'm going to change the name of this app to home. And then expose the header. So exposes is an object, and the key is what you want the import to look like on the other side. And then the value is whatever the source is. So in this case, it's /header is the key, and /source header.vue is our value. Now that's not going to take effect until we restart, so let's stop it and then yarn start again. And it looks like everything's fine. Now this has created a remote entry.js file with the project that has references to that code, to that header.vue code. And the reason it's called remote entry is because if you look back in Webpack config, there is that file name, remote entry.js. And now you can see down in the module map, we've got /header and essentially links to the code. Now the code isn't in remote entry. Remote entry points to the location of the code that'll be loaded on demand when you ask for it. So let's head over to our dog detail app. Bring that up and edit the Webpack config again. So in this case, we're going to add a remote. We're going to say that the home page is a remote of dog detail. And again, this is an object, and the key is whatever you want that value to be. So in this case, we're going to say it's home, but you can map it to whatever name you want. And then the syntax of the value is the remote name on the other side, which is home, and then and then the URL of the remote entry. So in this case, HTTP localhost 8080 remote entry.js. Now in app.vue, we're going to add a script tag. And we're going to import header from home/header. So home is what we defined in our Webpack. And then the header, /header, was defined in the Webpack of home as source header view. Again, let's expose that just like we would any other component. And then we'll bring that into our container. We'll start the application. And there we go. Now we've got our header loading up automatically. Excellent. And we can see that it's absolutely symmetric between home and dog detail. So if we go back to the header now, and we make a change, let's just add some exclamation points, and save, we can see that it immediately shows up in home. That's because of just live reload. And if we go over to dog detail, we hit refresh, and we get the 3 exclamation points. So this is a live connection between these two apps. Okay, that was really cool, but I think it gets even cooler. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the carousel page that shows the dogs on the dog detail page, and we're going to share that as well and get that to be consumed by the home page. That's bi-directional sharing straight out of an application. It's really cool. Let's take a look. So both of these applications have a dog carousel at the bottom, those 3 cute dogs. But the dog detail page has the names underneath, and that's preferable. So we're going to grab that one and we're going to reuse it in home so that we don't actually have 2 different code bases for these carousels. So the first thing to do is go over into dog detail and grab out the HTML for the carousel. And we're going to create a new file called carousel.vue. Create a template and paste in that code. And then we're going to go take the CSS out of here. Cut that out of there and paste that into the style for the carousel. Now I'm going to remove the HTML for the carousel and then add in the carousel tag. Then I'm going to import carousel just from the local directory and add it to the list of components. And we can see that the page looks the same, so it seems to be working. So let's go take this carousel.vue and expose it from dog detail using our module federation. That starts by going over to the Webpack config. Now we're going to change the name to dog detail because it's actually important at this point. And we're going to expose the carousel. Then restart. Now let's go over to the Webpack config for home and add that remote. So it's going to be dog detail, where dog detail equals dog detail at HTTP localhost 8081 remote entry.js. And finally, we'll import it. Import carousel from dog detail carousel. We'll add it to the list of components. And we'll replace the existing carousel with this new carousel. And then restart the app. And you can see right away, now we've got the symmetric carousel between both applications, and again, that's live shared. So I know it sounds a little twisty, but now dog detail depends on home, just like before, and now home depends on dog detail, and Webpack figures that all out and gets that bidirectionally going for you, no problem. Wow, bidirectional sharing is really cool. I think it's revolutionary. So one last thing before we go, I want to show you that we can take this and use it as essentially a micro front-end framework similar to something like a single SPA or an open components. So we'll create a new React app and then bring in our Vue header onto that page, and they'll both work together in the same ecosystem. It's really cool. So the next thing we want to try is to use this in a React app. So I'm going to go over to my GitHub and grab my starter kit for React. This is exactly the same thing for React as the starter kit is for Vue. And the link for this is down in the description. So let's open up a new terminal, go back a directory, and now I'm going to dgit that. But in this case, I need to dgit it from main because it's not master on this one, and create React host as the application name. So let's first change the port number from 8080 to 8082. So let's do a yarn to install it. Then yarn to start it. And you can see that we've got our Webpack 5 React app. So let's go into that index.html and add a new tag for the header. And we'll go over into home, and now we're going to create a JS file. We're going to copy the contents of bootloader and create a new JS file called mountheader.js and paste in the contents of the bootloader. So the first thing we're going to do is change app to header because that's what we want. Now, ideally, this would go on to #header in the target app. We'll actually make that an option. So let's change app to header as well here. Get rid of the CSS import. So next we're going to export a default function that takes a selector and then does that create app header on it with that selector. And we're going to change out that #header for the selector. And then finally, we're going to expose that mount header as another exposes. You can have as many exposes as you want. In this case, I'm going to leave the JS off. Now let's start that up. All right, still looking good, no errors. So let's jump over to our React app. And then bring up the Webpack config. And then specify a remote for home. Just like we did over in dog detail, exact same remote. And then in app.jsx, we're going to import mount header from home mount header. And then we're going to mount it on header. Now we haven't restarted, so that's why we're seeing this error that we can't resolve home because we haven't restarted the app. So let's stop it and restart it. Okay, look at that. You've got a Vue app and a React app on the same page. How cool is that? So we make a change here by adding some new exclamation points. You can see that home is changed immediately because that's where that component comes from. If you go over to dog detail, if we refresh, we get the new version. And finally, if you go over to the React app again and refresh, we see the updated version. So one more thing I want to show you is the dynamic loading behavior here. So currently we are always loading up that header, as you can see in the network tab with all the JS files that are loaded, including source header view. So let's go make that dynamic by adding a button to the app called launch header. Then we'll add an on-click handler to launch the header. Make a new function for that, which dynamically loads the header, which returns a promise. And then take the mount header module that comes back and see if we can invoke that the same way as we did before. So let's run that. And that's blowing up because mount header is not a function. Okay. Well, what mount header is a module. So we need to use .default on that. And now it works. And we can see over the network tab, we only load up that header and all the code for it when we hit that button. We always get the remote entry, but we only actually use the remote entry to get the additional files when we need them. So I hope you enjoyed that introduction to module federation and how it can be used with Vue 3, Vue 2, React, Vanilla.js, pretty much anything you want. It's a super exciting addition to Webpack 5. I think it's going to really change the game for web development in the next couple of years. All right. If you have any questions or comments about this video, be sure to put those in the comment section down below. In the description, you'll find a link to the Blue Collar Coder newsletter, and that newsletter gets you access to these videos a day earlier than everyone else. So that's really exciting, and it's free, and it's got JavaScript tips and tricks. So sign up. What do you got to lose? All right. As always, feel free to like and share this video with your friends. Hit the subscribe button if you like these videos and this series. In the meantime, be happy, be healthy, and be safe.